The rain in Atlanta that night was merciless, hammering against the cracked window pane of Isabella Martin's second-floor apartment like it wanted to get inside and drown everything. Isabella Martin, 31, African-American, single mother. Sat curled on the sagging couch in an oversized hoodie that had once belonged to someone who never came back. Her dark curls were twisted into a tired knot on top of her head, and the only light in the room came from the street lamp outside and the cracked screen of her phone. In the bedroom, her 18-month-old son, Malik Martin, whimpered in his sleep. Hungry again. The last can of formula had been scraped clean hours ago. She had diluted it with water until it was little more than tinted liquid, whispering lies to herself that it would be enough until Friday. She opened her messages, thumb hovering over her older brother Marcus's name. Marcus had helped before, always with a lecture and a reminder of every dollar she still owed him. Pride had kept her from asking for weeks. Hunger finally won. Hey, I'm so sorry to do this again. I just need $50 for formula. Malik's almost out. I get paid Friday. I swear I'll send it right back. Her hands shook as she typed. She didn't double-check the number. She hit send, pressed the phone to her forehead, and waited for the inevitable disappointment. 5 minutes later, the phone buzzed. Her heart leapt too fast, too hopeful, then crashed when she saw the reply. I think you sent that to the wrong person. Isabella stared, mortified. 1 digit off. She had texted a complete stranger. Heat flooded her face. She typed frantically. I am so sorry. Wrong number. Please just ignore that. She tossed the phone onto the couch like it burned her and pulled the threadbare blanket tighter around her shoulders. Another mistake in a life already full of them. 3 states away, in a glass-walled penthouse 47 floors above Manhattan. Charles Garcia stood at the window, watching rain streak down the skyline. Charles Garcia, 38, white American, billionaire CEO of Govatech Industries, former Army intelligence officer. A man who spoke so rarely that people in boardrooms leaned forward just to catch the sound of his voice, was staring at his private phone, the one that never rang. The one only 6 people on Earth had the number to, and 4 of them were either dead or estranged. The message glowed on the screen. Hey, I'm so sorry to do this again. I just need $50 for formula. Malik's almost out. I get paid Friday. I swear, I'll send it right back. It wasn't spam. It wasn't a scam. It was raw. Humiliated desperation from someone who had clearly intended it for a brother or a friend. Someone named Isabella had just laid her pride on the floor and asked for help. Charles read it twice, then a 3rd time. Most nights he would have deleted it without a second thought. Strangers were variables. Variables were risk. But tonight the words hooked something deep inside his chest that he had spent 15 years trying to bury. He typed back before he could talk himself out of it. I think you sent that to the wrong person. He watched the 3 dots appear, then vanish, then appear again. The reply came fast, frantic. I am so sorry. Wrong number. Please just ignore that. He stared at the screen longer than he should have. Then he opened Venmo, typed in the only thing he had, her phone number, and sent $10,000. The notification popped up on Isabella's phone like a bomb. $10,000 received from Charles Garcia. She blinked, refreshed the app, blinked again. The numbers didn't disappear. Her fingers flew across the screen. This is way too much. I only needed $50. I can't accept this. The reply was instant. It's already yours. No strings. She sat frozen, tears suddenly burning her eyes. She hadn't cried when she lost her job. She hadn't cried when Malik's father walked out the day she told him she was keeping the baby. But this random act from a stranger cracked something open. Another message. Take care of Malik. Her breath stopped. She had never told him her son's name. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. Outside, thunder rolled across Atlanta like a warning. Across the country. Charles set his own phone face down on the marble counter. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey he didn't drink and stared at the city that had never once kept him warm. He told himself it was just money. $10,000 was nothing. A rounding error. But he already knew it wasn't about the money. He opened his laptop, typed a single name into a secure search engine he wasn't supposed to have access to anymore, and waited for the file to load. Isabella Marie Martin, 31, Atlanta, Georgia. Former biochemistry researcher. Unemployed since Novigan folded. One child, Malik James Martin. 18 months. Last known address, a rundown complex in Mechanicsville. No criminal record. Credit score in the low 500s. Medical bills stacked like bricks. He closed the laptop, jaw tight. Then he opened his phone again and took a photograph through the high-powered lens he kept in the drawer, for reasons he never admitted to anyone. Not even himself. A second-floor window. A dim lamp. A silhouette of a woman holding a sleeping toddler against her shoulder. Rocking, rocking, rocking. He attached the photo and sent it. A single line beneath. I'm closer than you think, Isabella. He watched the message turn to delivered, then read. In Atlanta. Isabella's phone buzzed on the floor. She picked it up with trembling fingers and opened the message. The photo loaded slowly. It was her apartment window, taken from the parking lot below. Tonight, minutes ago. Her scream lodged in her throat. She ran to the window, yanked the blinds shut, heart slamming so hard she could barely breathe. Another message appeared. Don't be afraid. I just wanted you to know the money is real. And so am I. Sleep didn't come that night for either of them. Morning in Atlanta arrived gray and heavy. The rain finally gone, but the air still thick with it. Isabella hadn't slept. She sat at the tiny kitchen table clutching a cup of instant coffee gone cold, eyes fixed on the phone that still glowed with that impossible photograph. Malik stirred in his crib, let out a small cry. Hunger. Always hunger. A knock at the door made her jump so hard she nearly dropped the mug. No one knocked on her door. The landlord texted threats. Neighbors minded their own misery. She crept to the peephole. A delivery man in a crisp gray uniform stood there, clipboard in hand. Behind him, a hand truck stacked with boxes. 6, 7, maybe more. Delivery for Isabella Martin, he called. Her pulse hammered. She cracked the door, chains still latched. I didn't order anything. Sign here anyway, ma'am. She signed with a shaking hand. The man wheeled the dolly inside, stacked the boxes neatly by the wall, and left without another word. The door clicked shut. Silence pressed in. Isabella stared at the mountain of cardboard like it might bite her. She grabbed a kitchen knife and sliced the tape on the first box. Infant formula. The expensive European kind she used to see influencers post about, enough to last 4 months. Second box diapers, wipes, onesies in soft grays and blues. Tiny socks folded in perfect pairs. Third box, organic baby food, teething toys. A plush giraffe with a tag that read hand-stitched in Peru. Her hands shook so badly by the fourth box she had to sit on the floor. Inside, beneath layers of tissue, was a small envelope. Her name written in sharp, masculine handwriting. She opened it. Malik deserves better than watered-down formula and second-hand fear. Use the money. Buy yourself something that isn't a bill. I'll know if you don't. C. G. She pressed the card to her chest, tears finally spilling over. Malik's cries grew louder. She warmed a bottle, full strength for the first time in weeks, and watched him drink like he'd never tasted anything so good. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single text. Open the last box. There were only 4 boxes. She looked again. A 5th, smaller one had been placed quietly by the door while she was feeding Malik. She opened it with dread. Inside was the softest gray blanket she had ever felt. Cashmere, maybe. Embroidered in one corner with delicate script, Malik James. Her knees buckled. She sank to the carpet. Blanket clutched to her face, and sobbed without sound. The phone buzzed again. Do you still think I'm a scammer? She typed back before she could stop herself. Who are you? The reply took 30 seconds, long enough for her to imagine every worst-case scenario. The man who's going to change your life, whether you want me to or not. She stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Another message. Look out your window. She froze. Slowly, she rose and pulled the blind aside an inch. Across the street, beneath the dripping oak tree, a black Range Rover idled. Tinted windows. Impossible to see inside. But she knew. The hazard lights blinked once. Then the car pulled away and vanished into morning traffic. Isabella stood there for a long time, blanket still pressed to her chest, heart racing with terror and something else she refused to name. Hope, maybe? Or the beginning of a nightmare she had no idea how to escape. The invitation arrived at exactly 9:07 m, 3 days after the blanket. A single message. No greeting. No explanation. Tomorrow, 1100 a.m., Govatech Tower, Midtown Atlanta, 37th floor. Ask for Ava Lynn. Bring Malik. C. G. Isabella stared at the screen until the words burned themselves into her retinas. She had spent the last 72 hours oscillating between gratitude and panic. The money sat untouched in her account, except for one trip to the grocery store, where she bought real food for the first time in months. The boxes still occupied half her living room like silent witnesses. She almost deleted the message and blocked the number. But the memory of that black Range Rover under the oak tree stopped her. She had no choice. The next morning, she dressed with shaking hands, her only clean pair of black slacks, a white blouse she'd ironed twice, and the navy blazer that still fit from her old life. Malik wore the softest onesie from the mystery boxes, the one with tiny giraffes marching across the chest. She buckled him into the stroller and took the bus downtown. Every mile feeling like a countdown. Govatech Tower speared into the sky like a blade of glass and steel. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and light. Security guards in charcoal suits watched her approach with polite curiosity. She gave her name at the desk. The receptionist's smile widened in recognition. Miss Martin, you're expected. Elevator on the left. It'll take you straight to 37. The elevator had no buttons. It simply knew. Malik babbled and slapped the mirrored wall as they shot upward. Isabella's stomach stayed on the ground floor. The doors slid open into a hallway of frosted glass and hushed voices. A woman waited sleek black suit, tablet balanced on one palm. Warm eyes that immediately dropped to Malik. Isabella Martin. Her voice was smooth, professional, but kind. I'm Ava Lynn, Mr. Garcia's chief of staff. This way. They walked past offices where people in expensive clothes pretended not to stare. Ava stopped at a set of double doors and pushed them open. Isabella's breath caught. It wasn't an office. It was a nursery. Soft gray walls, a real wooden crib with breathable mesh sides, a changing table already stocked with the exact brand of diapers she used, a rocking chair positioned to catch natural light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. A mobile of felt stars and moons spun lazily above the crib. On the wall, in simple block letters, Malik. Ava smiled gently. He thought you might need somewhere safe for him while we talk. Isabella couldn't speak. Malik reached for her, confused by the sudden stillness. Ava's tablet chimed. He's ready. She led them down the hall to a corner office that looked out over the entire city. The door was already open. Charles Garcia stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, city sprawling beneath him like a map he owned. He turned when they entered. In person, he was taller than she expected, broader, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than her yearly rent. His hair was dark, cut short, and the lines around his eyes spoke of too many nights without sleep. But it was the eyes themselves that stopped her pale blue, almost colorless, and fixed on her with an intensity that made the room shrink. Isabella. Her name sounded different in his mouth, careful, like he'd practiced it. She clutched the stroller handle. Mr. Garcia? Charles. He stepped forward, gaze dropping to Malik, who stared back with wide, curious eyes. Something flickered across Charles's face, too fast to name. Thank you for coming. I didn't feel like I had a choice. A faint curve at the corner of his mouth. Fair. He gestured to the seating area low couch, 2 armchairs, a coffee table with a single folder on it. Ava closed the door behind her as she left. Isabella sat, Malik on her lap now. Charles took the chair opposite, leaning forward, elbows on knees. I'm going to be direct, he said. I didn't bring you here to scare you. I brought you here because I need something only you can give me. Her pulse hammered. I'm not for sale. I know. His voice was low. That's why it has to be you. He opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It was a screenshot of financial transactions, small payments routed to a shell company in Delaware. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Maybe. Someone inside my company is stealing, he said. Not enough at once to trigger alarms. Just enough, over time, to bleed millions. My own people can't find it, or won't. Isabella stared at the numbers. The pattern was subtle, elegant, almost invisible. She recognized the rhythm immediately. I used to audit clinical trial budgets, she said slowly. This is surgical. Exactly. His eyes never left her face. I need someone who sees what others miss. Someone no one here will suspect. Someone who doesn't owe this place anything. He slid a contract across the table next. Temporary senior forensic auditor. 6-figure salary. Flexible hours. Full benefits. Nursery privileges. Start immediately. She laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. You want me to spy for you? I want you to tell the truth, he corrected. And I'll pay you what that's worth. Malik reached for the contract, grabbed the corner, and tried to eat it. Isabella pulled it away gently. Why me, she asked. You don't know me. Charles leaned back, the city glittering behind him like a crown he didn't want. Because 3 days ago, you were willing to starve before you let your son go hungry. People like that don't lie well, and they don't betray easily. Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. Isabella looked at Malik, then at the contract, then at the man who had stepped out of the shadows and into her life without permission. I have conditions, she said. Name them. No more photographs from parking lots. No more following me. You want my help? You ask like a human being. For the first time, something like a real smile touched his mouth. Done. She picked up the pen. Her first official day began with a badge clipped to her blazer and a knot in her stomach that wouldn't loosen. Ava met her at the elevator again, handed her a sleek laptop and a keycard that opened every door on the 37th floor. Malik was already settled in the nursery with a young nanny named Sophia who cooed over him like he was royalty. Isabella's office was small but perfect dual monitors. Ergonomic everything. A window that looked out over Piedmont Park. The chair felt like sitting on a cloud. She opened the secure drive Charles had given her and started digging. By noon, she had traced the ghost payments through 4 departments. By 2, she had isolated the vendor code that didn't exist anywhere else in the system. By 4, she was tracing approval chains and feeling the first prickle of real fear. Because every trail ended at the same office. CFO, Victor Hayes. She was still staring at the screen when a shadow fell across her desk. New girl, a smooth voice said. She looked up. Victor Hayes leaned against her doorframe like he owned gravity. Tall, impeccably dressed, blonde hair swept back, smile sharp enough to cut glass. You must be Isabella. He stepped inside without invitation. I've heard so much. His eyes flicked to the open files on her screen, then to the nursery visible through the glass partition where Malik napped. Charles does love his special projects, he said softly. Isabella closed the laptop. I'm just doing my job. Of course. Victor's smile widened. And what exactly is your job? Making sure the numbers add up. They always do. He moved closer, voice dropping. Eventually, he left as quietly as he'd come, but the air felt colder. That evening, Charles found her still at her desk, screens dark, staring at nothing. You met Victor, he said. It wasn't a question. He knows. He suspects. Charles closed the door. There's a difference. Is there? She stood, anger flaring. He looked at my son like he was calculating leverage. Charles's jaw tightened. He won't touch him. You can't promise that. I just did. They stared at each other across the desk, the city lights beginning to flicker on outside. Finally, he spoke again, quieter. I've been watching him for 18 months. He's careful, he's patient, and he's very, very good at making problems disappear. Isabella wrapped her arms around herself. Then why bring me into this? Because you're better. She laughed. Bitter. I'm a single mom from Mechanicsville who can't pay her light bill. You're the only person in this building who isn't afraid to lose something, he said. That makes you dangerous. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar that ran through his left eyebrow. I'm not asking you to trust me yet, he said. Just don't quit. Not tonight. She wanted to tell him to go to hell. Instead, she heard herself say, I want security on the nursery, 24/7. Already done. And if Victor comes near Malik again, he won't leave the building upright. The words were so calm, so matter-of-fact, that a chill ran through her. She believed him. That night, she left later than she meant to. The garage was nearly empty, her footsteps echoing too loud. She was halfway to her car when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single line. Careful, Isabella. Some doors, once opened, don't let you close them again. She spun around. Nothing but shadows and the low hum of fluorescent lights. But she felt watched. She ran the rest of the way to her car, locked the doors, and sat shaking until her breath fogged the windows. When she finally started the engine, another message arrived. This time from Charles. You're not alone. She looked in the rearview mirror. A black Range Rover idled 2 rows back, headlights off. For the first time since this began, the sight didn't terrify her. It felt like protection. Isabella began sleeping with her phone under her pillow and a kitchen knife in the nightstand. Every night, she double-checked the locks, the windows, the deadbolt she had installed herself after the first anonymous text. Malik slept in a portable crib pushed against her side of the bed so she could reach out and touch him whenever the silence felt too heavy. At Govatech, the days blurred into a rhythm of spreadsheets and quiet dread. She learned to keep her office door locked when she worked late. She learned the exact blind spots of the security cameras. She learned that Victor Hayes never repeated the same route twice through the executive floor. He moved like smoke. She also learned that Charles Garcia never slept. He appeared at odd hours, 600 m, with 2 coffees and a quiet nod. Midnight leaning in her doorway, while the city glittered behind him. Once at 3:17 a.m., when she startled awake to find him sitting in the nursery rocking chair, watching Malik breathe. "You shouldn't be here," she had whispered. "I know," he answered, but he didn't move until dawn. The evidence was stacking up faster than she could document it. Victor had grown careless. Or maybe arrogant. The ghost payments had tripled in volume since she started digging. He was moving money like a man preparing for an exit. On a Thursday that felt like the 100th day instead of the 19th, Isabella stayed until the building was almost empty. Malik had fallen asleep in the nursery after a feverish afternoon. Sophia had gone home sick. So Isabella brought the portable crib into her office and worked with one eye on the monitor feed. At 11:42 p.m., she found it. A single transfer scheduled for the following Monday, $48 million, to an account in the Caymans. Final payout. Victor was cashing out. She saved the file to an encrypted drive the size of a postage stamp and slipped it into the hidden pocket of Malik's giraffe onesie. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. This time, a photo. Malik asleep in the portable crib, taken from inside her office, less than 2 feet from where she now sat. Under the photo. "You're getting too good at this game, Isabella. Stop now, or the boy pays the bill." She was on her feet before the scream left her throat. She scooped Malik up, crib and all, and ran. The hallway was dark, except for the red exit signs. Her footsteps echoed like gunshots. She slammed the stairwell door open and took the stairs 2 at a time. Malik clutched against her chest, his small, confused cries, the only sound in the world. She didn't stop until she reached the security desk on the ground floor. "Lock the building down," she gasped. Someone was on 37. The guard reached for the phone, but before he could speak, every light in the lobby went out. Emergency strips glowed red. Then the power snapped back on. Charles stood 10 feet away, breathing hard, suit jacket gone, white shirt untucked, eyes wild. "I've got you," he said. He took them out a side exit where 2 black SUVs waited. He put her and Malik in the back of the second one himself, climbed in after, and slammed the door. Only when they were moving did she realize she was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Charles pulled her against his side, without asking permission, one arm around her shoulders, the other hand resting protectively over Malik's back. "He got inside," she whispered. "He was in my office." "I know." His voice was rough. Cameras went dark for 90 seconds. Long enough. She looked up at him. This was a warning. "No," he said. This was a declaration. The SUV turned into an underground garage she didn't recognize. Armed guards waved them through a steel gate that closed behind them with a sound like a vault. Charles carried the crib himself while she held Malik. They rode a private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened into a penthouse that took up the entire level. Floor-to-ceiling bulletproof glass. No neighbors. No access without retinal scan. "Welcome home," Charles said quietly. "Until this is over, you and Malik stay here." She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream that she wasn't a prisoner. Instead, she walked to the window and looked out over the city that had never felt safe. And for the first time in years, she cried in front of another person. Charles stood behind her, not touching, just close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I'm sorry," he said. "I never meant for it to go this far." She turned, then ended. "I will," he promised, "but not tonight." He showed her the guest wing, 2 bedrooms. A nursery already stocked with everything Malik could need. A kitchen bigger than her old apartment. Then he left her alone, with a final look that felt like it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. She put Malik to bed in a crib that smelled faintly of lavender and new wood. She stood over him for a long time, watching his chest rise and fall. When she finally stepped into the hallway, Charles was waiting. He held out a small black device. New phone. Untraceable. Only 3 numbers in it, mine. Ava's. And emergency. She took it. "Charles." He met her eyes. "If anything happens to my son—" "Nothing will," he cut in, fierce. "Not while I'm breathing." Something shifted in the air between them. Too raw. Too sharp. She reached up and touched the hollow beneath his eye where exhaustion had carved permanent shadows. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks." "I haven't. Because of this. Because of Victor." He started to answer, then stopped. Finally. "Because of you." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of every moment they had pretended not to notice, the way his gaze lingered when she laughed at something Malik did, the way she found herself watching the door until he walked through it, the way neither of them had said the obvious thing yet. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Not soft, not gentle. A collision. He made a low sound and kissed her back, like a man who had been starving for years. His hands framed her face, then slid into her hair, and for a few breathless seconds the world narrowed to just this. When they broke apart, foreheads still touching, he whispered, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "Don't," she said. "Don't apologize for the only thing that's felt real in weeks." He rested his brow against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he said. "Not like that. Just stay. I need to know you're safe." She nodded. They ended up on the oversized couch in the living room, Malik's baby monitor on the coffee table, her head on Charles's chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. For the first time since the wrong number text, Isabella slept without dreaming of falling. Morning in the penthouse was too quiet. Sunlight poured through the glass and painted everything gold, but the silence felt loaded. Isabella woke to find Charles already gone from the couch. She found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, making scrambled eggs one-handed while scrolling through a tablet with the other. He looked like he'd slept maybe 2 hours. Malik sat in a high chair. Charles must have had delivered overnight, happily smearing banana across his tray and grinning at Charles like they were old friends. The sight stopped her in the doorway. Charles glanced up. "Coffee's fresh. Eggs in 2 minutes. Yes." She patted over, poured herself a mug, and leaned against the counter. "We need a plan," she said. "We have one." He slid the tablet toward her. A single line glowed on the screen. Monday, 9:00 a.m. Board meeting. Emergency session. Victor thinks he's presenting the quarterly forecast. He's walking into a trap. She looked up. "You're going to confront him in front of the entire board." "No," Charles said. "You are." He explained while Malik banged a plastic spoon like a drum. Over the last 48 hours, using the encrypted drive hidden in the giraffe onesie, Isabella's findings had been duplicated, triple encrypted, and sent anonymously to every board member, the SEC, and 3 major financial news outlets with a 72-hour delay. If anything happened to Isabella or Charles before Monday, the files went live. Victor's only play now was to discredit her completely, or run. Charles was betting on the first. "You're using me as bait," she said flatly. "I'm giving you the stage," he corrected, "and 20 armed guards you won't see." She stared at him for a long moment. "You should have asked me." "I'm asking now." Malik threw his spoon. It bounced off Charles's forehead. Charles didn't even flinch. Just picked it up and handed it back with a small smile. Isabella felt something crack open inside her chest. "Fine," she said, "but if we do this, we do it my way too." Charles raised an eyebrow. "Victor threatened my son," she said. "I want 5 minutes alone with him before the meeting." Charles's face went very still. "Isabella, 5 minutes. You owe me that." He looked at her for a long time, then nodded once. The rest of the weekend passed in a strange domestic limbo. Charles worked from the penthouse, fielding calls in clipped tones that made whoever was on the other end sound terrified. Isabella prepared her presentation until she could recite it in her sleep. Malik discovered the joy of throwing Cheerios off the balcony and watching them disappear 47 floors down. Saturday night, after Malik was asleep, they stood on that same balcony, city lights flickering below like fallen stars. Charles handed her a glass of wine. "I need to tell you something," he said. She waited. 8 years ago, I lost someone," he said quietly. "My wife. Car accident. She was 8 months pregnant." The words hung between them. "I shut down after that. Built walls no one could climb. Govatech became the only thing I still knew how to protect." He looked at her. "Then you sent that text to the wrong number, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to want to keep someone safe, more than I wanted to keep myself numb." Isabella set her glass down and stepped into his arms. "I'm not her," she whispered against his chest. "I know," he said. "You're the reason I'm finally ready to live again." They kissed slow and deliberate this time, like a promise neither of them had dared to speak aloud. Sunday night, she couldn't sleep. She slipped out of bed and found Charles in his office, staring at an old photograph, a woman with laughing eyes, very pregnant, arms around his younger, happier self. He didn't look surprised to see her. "I keep it to remember why I can't fail again," he said. She took the frame from his hand and set it face down. "You won't," she said, "because this time you're not alone." Monday dawned bright and merciless. They dressed like armor Charles, in a black suit that made him look untouchable. Isabella in the navy blazer and a sheath dress that felt like war paint. At 8:47 a.m., she walked into the executive conference room alone. Victor was already there, reviewing notes, relaxed as a cat. He looked up and smiled. "Isabella, to what do I owe the pleasure?" She closed the door. "You threatened my son," she said. Victor's smile didn't waver. "I don't know what you're—" She stepped forward and slapped him across the face so hard his head snapped sideways. "That was for the photo in my office." Before he could recover, she grabbed his tie and yanked him close. "And this is your only warning," she whispered. "Touch him again, and I will burn your entire world down and salt the earth behind me." She let go and stepped back as the door opened. Charles stood there, expression unreadable. "Time," he said. Victor straightened his tie, cheek already swelling, eyes glittering with something that looked a lot like respect. The boardroom filled quickly after that. At 900 a. sharp, Charles took his place at the head of the table. Victor began his presentation, all confidence and charm. At 9:12, the lights dimmed, and Isabella's evidence appeared on the screen behind him Every transaction, every shell company, every offshore account. Victor froze. Charles's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Gentlemen, it appears our CFO has been running a side business." The room erupted. Victor lunged for the door. He didn't make it 2 steps before security tackled him to the carpet. Isabella stood at the front of the room, remote in her hand, heart pounding so hard she could barely hear the chaos. Charles met her eyes across the table. She nodded once. It was over. Or so they thought. They thought the trap had closed. Victor Hayes was led out in handcuffs by federal agents, while cameras flashed and board members shouted questions no one answered. Charles stood at the head of the table like a general after victory, one hand resting lightly on Isabella's shoulder as if to say, "We did it." But Victor's last look before the elevator doors shut was not defeat. It was a promise. That night, the penthouse felt almost peaceful. Malik chased a remote control car across Italian marble, while Charles cooked something that smelled like garlic and safety. Isabella stood at the window, watching downtown Atlanta sparkle, trying to convince herself the war was truly over. Her new phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single line. "You celebrated too early." Before she could screenshot it, the message deleted itself. At 11:47 p.m., the lights went out. Not a flicker, a hard, absolute blackout. The entire building plunged into darkness so complete it felt like drowning. Charles was across the room in 2 strides, pressing her and Malik behind the kitchen island. "Stay low," he ordered, voice calm but lethal. Emergency lighting kicked in, blood-red strips along the floor. The front door exploded inward. 3 men in black tactical gear moved fast, suppressed rifles raised. Charles already had a pistol in his hand. Isabella hadn't even seen him draw it. He fired twice. The first intruder dropped. The second returned fire. Muzzle flashes strobing the room like hell's disco. Isabella crawled toward the panic room Charles had shown her once and sworn she'd never need. Malik was screaming in her arms, hot and terrified. She slammed the steel door behind them and hit the lock. The monitor inside showed the living room in night vision green. Charles was a blur of motion, one-handed reload, using the couch as cover, precise shots that found their marks. The second intruder went down. The third reached for something on his vest. Grenade. Charles saw it at the same moment Isabella did. He sprinted straight at the man, tackled him through the floor-to-ceiling window. 47 stories of nothing but night. Isabella screamed his name. Glass rained like diamonds. Silence followed, broken only by Malik's sobs and the distant wail of sirens. She stared at the shattered window, wind howling through the gaping hole, unable to process what she had just seen. Then a hand appeared on the jagged sill. Another. Charles hauled himself back inside, bleeding from a dozen cuts, left arm hanging useless, but alive. He had grabbed the maintenance railing outside at the last second. He staggered toward the panic room, leaving red footprints on the marble. Isabella flung the door open and ran to him. "You jumped out a fucking window," she choked. "Wasn't planning on dying tonight," he rasped, dropping to his knees. Sirens grew louder. SWAT breached what was left of the front door, shouting commands. Charles waved them off with his good arm. "Victor Hayes," he told the lead agent. "He's not finished." They found the orders on the dead men's phones: eliminate Garcia and the woman, take the child alive. Victor's final play, if he was going down, he would leave Charles with nothing. The penthouse became a crime scene. Isabella sat on the floor of the nursery, wrapped in a shock blanket, while paramedics stitched Charles's arm and picked glass out of his back. He refused to go to the hospital until she and Malik were airlifted to a safe house outside the city, a farm property no one knew he owned, ringed by private security and guarded by men who had once served under him in worse places than Atlanta. At 4:12 a.m., they touched down on a private airstrip. Dawn was still hours away. Charles carried Malik, asleep again from exhaustion, while Isabella walked beside him, barefoot in borrowed scrubs, holding the giraffe onesie that still contained the original encrypted drive. Inside the farmhouse, warm light and the smell of coffee waited. Ava stood at the door, eyes red. "I'm sorry," she said. "We thought it was over." "It's not," Charles answered. "Not until he's in a box or I am." Isabella set Malik in a waiting crib, then turned to Charles. He was swaying on his feet, blood still seeping through the bandage. She took the pistol from his hand, set it on the counter, and led him to the couch. "Sit." He sat. She knelt in front of him, hands on his knees. "Look at me." He did. His eyes were glassy with pain and something darker. "I watched you fall 47 floors tonight," she said, voice shaking. "Don't you ever do that again." "I had to." "No." She cupped his face. "You don't get to decide alone anymore. We're a package deal now. Me, Malik, and the idiot who jumps out windows. You want us. You stay alive." Something broke in his expression. He pulled her into his lap, buried his face in her neck, and held on like she was the only solid thing left in the world. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her skin. "I dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me anywhere," she said fiercely. "I walked, eyes open." They stayed like that until sunrise painted the fields gold. Later, when Malik was fed and playing with wooden blocks on a quilt, Charles gathered the small team that had arrived with them: Ava, 2 ex-Delta operators, now on his payroll, and a federal prosecutor who owed him a favor the size of Texas. Victor had vanished from custody during the chaos of transfer. Someone on the inside had looked the other way. Charles laid a satellite photo on the table. "He's running," he said, "but he's wounded. And he still wants the one thing he thinks will destroy me." He looked at Isabella. "You." She didn't flinch. "Then we stop running," she said. They flew out on a blacked-out Gulfstream before noon. Not to another safe house. To Victor's endgame. Charles had always known about the private island 15 miles off the coast of Belize, 30 acres of jungle, 1 airstrip, no extradition. Victor had bought it years ago under a shell company even Charles hadn't found until Isabella's audit cracked the Cayman accounts wide open. Victor thought it was his fortress. Charles intended to prove him wrong. The flight took 4 hours. Malik slept most of it strapped to Isabella's chest, oblivious to the fact that the woman holding him had spent the night learning how to field strip a Glock with one hand. They landed at dusk on a strip carved out of jungle so dense it swallowed sound. 12 operatives in total, Charles's people, plus 2 federal marshals who wanted Victor almost as badly as he did. They moved fast and quiet. Victor's security was good. Ex-military, South African accents, serious hardware. But they weren't expecting ghosts. Charles took the main house. Isabella went with the second team to the server bunker buried beneath the helipad. That was where the real prize waited: every transaction, every bribe, every dirty secret Victor had ever hidden. She found it in under 8 minutes. While Charles's team breached the perimeter, Isabella sat cross-legged on a concrete floor in a room full of humming servers and downloaded 15 years of corruption onto a rugged drive the size of a lipstick. When the shooting started, she didn't flinch. She just kept copying. Charles found her 23 minutes later, smoke drifting in from the hallway, blood on his sleeve that wasn't his. "It's done," he said. She held up the drive. "So is this." They walked out together into a night that smelled of gunpowder and salt. Victor waited on the beach. Alone. Hands cuffed behind his back, guarded by two marshals who looked like they'd enjoy putting a bullet in him if paperwork allowed it. Moonlight silvered the sand. Victor smiled when he saw them. "Charles," he said pleasantly, "you always did prefer the dramatic entrance." Charles didn't answer. He stopped 10 feet away, pistol hanging loose at his side. Victor's gaze shifted to Isabella. "You were supposed to be a distraction," he told her. "A nobody. How disappointing." She stepped forward until the muzzle of Charles's borrowed rifle rested against Victor's forehead. "You made one mistake," she said quietly. "What's that?" "You thought the nobody wouldn't fight back." She nodded to the marshals. They hauled Victor away. He never stopped smiling. On the flight home, Malik slept on Charles's chest for the first time. Tiny hand curled around Charles's thumb like it had always belonged there. Isabella watched them from the opposite seat, exhausted, aching, and strangely at peace. Charles met her eyes over Malik's curls. "It's really over this time," he said. She believed him. 3 weeks later, the story broke across every major outlet. Govatech CFO arrested on private island in dramatic raid. No mention of the woman who made it possible. No mention of the child. Charles made sure of that. Victor took a plea, 40 years, no parole. The company survived. The stock soared. And life, impossibly, began again. They kept the farmhouse. Isabella went back to work, this time as head of forensic audit. No temporary in the title. Salary obscene enough to make her laugh out loud when she saw it. Malik learned to walk on wide plank floors that creaked under tiny feet. Charles learned how to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, and that 3 hasina wake-ups for nightmares were easier when there were 2 people to handle them. 1 year later, almost to the day, the wrong number text had changed everything. Charles found Isabella in the nursery hanging a new mobile above the crib that would soon belong to someone else. She was 7 months pregnant and glowing in a way that made his chest hurt. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, hands resting on the curve of her belly. "Marry me," he said against her ear, not a question. She turned in his arms. "You already know the answer. Say it anyway." "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. He kissed her slow and deep, the way they had learned to do when the world finally stopped trying to tear them apart. Later, when the house was quiet and the Georgia stars pressed close against the windows, Charles stood on the porch watching fireflies blink across the field. Isabella joined him, barefoot, his old army sweatshirt swallowing her frame. She slipped her hand into his. "Still can't believe this is real sometimes," she said. He brought her knuckles to his lips. "Believe it." In the distance, Malik's laughter drifted from an open window as he played with the nanny, who now lived in the guest cottage. Charles pulled Isabella closer. "From one wrong number," he murmured, "to everything right." She smiled against his shoulder. "Best mistake I ever made." And under a sky wide enough to hold every second chance they'd been given, they stood wrapped in each other, and the life they had fought tooth and nail to keep. No more shadows. No more ghosts. Just the 3 of them, soon to be 4, and a future finally bright enough to look at without flinching. The wedding was never supposed to be big. Isabella had laughed when Charles first mentioned the farm in late August. "We're not fancy people," she said. "Let's just go to the courthouse, sign the papers, and eat barbecue after." Charles had simply looked at her with that quiet half-smile that always made her stomach flip and said, "You deserve one day where the world stops trying to kill us." So the world got invited. Not the whole world, just the pieces that mattered. The farmhouse lawn was transformed in 3 weeks. White tents rose like sails. Fairy lights strung through 200-year-old oaks. Long tables set beneath a sky so blue it looked photoshopped. Ava turned into a general, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, terrorizing florists and caterers with military precision. Malik, now a sturdy 2.5-year-old with opinions about everything, insisted on carrying the rings in a little wagon pulled by Charles's German Shepherd. Ranger. Isabella's brother Marcus flew in from Charlotte, still suspicious of the entire fairy tale, but softening every time Malik called him Uncle Mark and dragged him to see the horses. Isabella's mother arrived with a suitcase full of lace and tears, declaring she had always known her daughter would marry up. But Lord, not this far up. Charles's side was quieter. A handful of Delta brothers who spoke in short sentences and watched every entrance. An aunt from Vermont who kept hugging him like he might vanish, and one empty chair with a single white rose tied to it, for the family he had lost years ago. The morning of the wedding, Isabella stood in the master bedroom in a simple silk robe, staring at the dress hanging on the wardrobe door. Not a ball gown, a column of ivory lace that skimmed her 8-month pregnant belly and fell to the floor like water. The designer had cried when Isabella told her, "I want to look like me, just the best version on the best day." A soft knock. Charles's voice, low through the wood. "Tradition says I'm not allowed to see you yet." "Since when do we care about tradition?" she called back. The door opened anyway. He stepped inside wearing jeans and a white undershirt, hair still damp from the shower, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep and something else. He stopped when he saw her. "Jesus, Isabella. That better be a good Jesus." He crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed her, like they were still hiding in safe houses, like tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. When he pulled back, his hands framed her belly. "Hey, little man," he whispered to the baby who had just kicked hard enough to make them both laugh. "Save some of that for the dance floor." Malik burst in, wearing tiny suspenders and a bow tie, bigger than his face. "Mama Daddy says we're late for marrying." Charles scooped him up. "Technically, we're not late until the bride walks down the aisle. Buddy." Isabella smoothed Malik's curls. "Give Mama 5 minutes." Charles kissed her forehead, then Malik's, and backed out of the room still staring at her, like she was the only real thing he'd ever been allowed to keep. The ceremony was at sunset. Isabella walked the aisle alone, no one to give her away, because she had chosen this life with her eyes wide open. The grass was soft under her bare feet. Every person who had ever protected them, fought for them, loved them, stood as she passed. Charles waited beneath an arch woven with magnolia and jasmine, wearing a navy suit that fit like it had been sewn onto him. His hands shook when he took hers. The officiant was a judge who had once signed Victor's arrest warrant. She kept it short. Charles spoke first, voice rough. "I had everything money could buy, and nothing that mattered, until a wrong number at 2 to 14 a.m. taught me what brave looks like. You and Malik didn't just save my company. You saved me. I will spend every day of the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of the miracle that started with $50 and a hungry baby." Isabella's turn. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall and ruin Ava's makeup masterpiece. "I came to you broken, scared, and ready to fight the world alone. You looked at me and said, 'Not anymore.' You jumped out a window for my son. You gave us a home before you even knew if we'd let you stay." Charles Garcia. "Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done." Malik, bored with standing still, suddenly shouted, "Can we kiss now?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. The judge grinned. "Close enough. I now pronounce you husband and wife." "Sir, you may absolutely kiss your bride." Charles did. Long, slow, and unapologetic. One hand cradling the back of her neck, the other supporting her belly like he was holding their entire future. When they finally pulled apart, the sky had turned rose gold, and the first fireflies blinked on like nature's paparazzi. The reception was loud, southern, and perfect. Marcus gave a speech that made Charles tear up. Ava got tipsy and told stories no one was supposed to repeat. Malik fell asleep on Ranger's back halfway through the cake cutting. Later, when the band switched to slow songs and the lanterns glowed soft against the dark, Charles led Isabella to the center of the wooden dance floor built just for tonight. He pulled her as close as her belly allowed. "Hi, Mrs. Garcia," he murmured against her temple. "Hi, Miss Garcia," she whispered back. They swayed while Sam Cooke sang about a change coming, and for the first time in either of their lives, the change felt gentle instead of violent. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday in early December, screaming like she already had opinions about the world. They named her Hope Eleanor Garcia. Hope because they finally believed in it. Eleanor, after Charles's mother, who never got to hold her granddaughter. The farmhouse filled with chaos and joy in equal measure, midnight feedings, Malik's proud big brother announcements, Ranger lying across doorways like a furry bodyguard. Charles took 3 whole months off. No emails, no calls, just diapers and lullabies and learning how to make Isabella laugh when postpartum days felt heavy. On the night Hope turned 6 weeks old, snow fell soft and rare over Georgia. Charles built a fire in the great room and laid blankets on the rug. Malik was asleep upstairs, Hope dozing in the bassinet, tiny fist curled around Charles's finger, even in dreams. Isabella curled against his side, watching flames dance. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she admitted quietly. Charles kissed her temple. "It won't." But the next morning it did. Ava called at dawn, voice tight. "You need to come to the office. Both of you. Bring the kids." They arrived to find the entire executive floor sealed. Federal agents in windbreakers stood at every entrance. In the boardroom waited a man neither of them had ever seen, early 50s, expensive suit, eyes like winter. He introduced himself as Special Agent Hollis, Department of Justice. Then he laid a thick file on the table. 6 months ago, he began, Victor Hayes was moved to a low-security facility pending appeal. 3 days ago, he was found dead in his cell. Official ruling, suicide. Charles went very still. Isabella's hand found his under the table. Hollis opened the file. Inside was a single photograph, Victor hanging from a bedsheet. Eyes open, mouth twisted into that same infuriating smile. Across his chest, someone had carved words into the skin with what looked like a sharpened spoon. For Isabella. Beneath the photo, a flash drive. "We found this hidden in his rectum," Hollis said without emotion. "It's addressed to you both." Charles's grip on her hand turned crushing. They watched the video together in a secure room, Hope asleep against Isabella's chest, Malik coloring quietly with Ava in the corner. Victor looked thin, pale, but unmistakably alive, recorded 2 days before his death. He stared straight into the camera. "By the time you see this, I'll be gone. Don't waste tears. None of you are worth them. But I'm not the kind of man who loses. Even in death. Charles, you took everything from me, Isabella. You made it personal. So I took something from you. Check the DNA results attached to this drive. Little Hope isn't yours, Charles. She's mine. I paid a guard. 1 visit, 1 vial, 1 fertility clinic that asked no questions. You'll raise my daughter. Love her. Give her the life I never got to finish. Every time you look at her, you'll remember who really won." The video ended. The room was so quiet, Isabella could hear her own heartbeat. Charles didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he stood slowly, walked to the window, and stared out at nothing. Isabella followed, Hope still sleeping peacefully against her, completely unaware that the world had just tilted on its axis. She touched Charles's back. He flinched. Charles. He turned. His eyes were hollow. "It's a lie," she said fiercely. "He's dead. This is the last weapon he had." The test. We'll do our own 10 tests, 100. But even if, God forbid, there's a single drop of truth in what he said. She stepped closer, cupped his face with her free hand. She's ours. She was conceived in love, born into love, raised by love. Biology is the least part of what makes a father. His knees buckled. He sank into a chair, head in his hands. Isabella knelt in front of him, Hope nestled between them. "Look at me." He did. Tears tracked silently down his face. "She has your nose," Isabella whispered, "and the way she smiles when you walk into the room. That's you. Not him. Never him." Charles reached out with shaking fingers and touched Hope's tiny hand. She gripped his finger in her sleep, instinctive, trusting. Something inside him shattered and rebuilt all at once. He pulled Isabella and Hope into his arms and held them like letting go would end him. Agent Hollis cleared his throat from the doorway. "We ran the clinic records," he said gently. "The dates don't match. Victor never had access. The vial was saline. It was a bluff. His very last one." Charles exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for years. He pressed his forehead to Isabella's. "I don't need the test," he said, voice raw. "She's mine. You're mine. That's the only truth I've ever needed." They burned the flash drive in the farmhouse fireplace that night. Snow kept falling, soft and cleansing. Years later, when Hope was old enough to ask why her daddy sometimes woke up from nightmares, reaching for a gun that wasn't there, Charles would sit her on his knee and tell her the only version that mattered. "Once upon a time, a very bad man tried to hurt the people I love most. But love is stronger than bad men, and we won." The end. And when she asked why Mama always cried at the happy parts, Isabella would smile through tears and say, "Because sometimes the best stories start with the worst mistakes." On the porch, wrapped in the same blanket from the very first night everything changed, Charles and Isabella watched their children chase fireflies while Ranger barked at nothing. Charles pulled her close. "Still the best wrong number I never sent," he murmured. Isabella laughed, the sound bright against the Georgia dark. "Best $10,000 I never meant to accept." They kissed, slow and certain, while above them, the same stars that had watched a desperate text light up a stranger's phone years ago blinked down in quiet approval. Some love stories begin with fireworks. Ours began with $50, a hungry baby, and a man who decided one mistake was worth saving the world for. And that was enough. If this journey from a single wrong text to a family forged in fire touched your heart, made you cheer, cry, or hold your breath even once, do me a huge favor. Drop your favorite moment in the comments below. I read every single one. Hit that like button if you believe second chances can change everything. And subscribe with notifications on. Because next week, we're starting a brand new story about a nanny, a reclusive rock star, and one forbidden contract that was never supposed to include falling in love. You won't want to miss it. See you there.